Oi! Oi, blue boy!
An intense whisper reached him. Truestrike looked around in confusion, but saw nothing. His squadmates appeared equally puzzled.
Stop looking around like a brat, looking for his mummy. It's me, Nobby!
The familiar voice said.
Slick? Where are you? I can't see you.
Truestrike replied, still scanning the area for the diminutive uphuman.
Here, you rusted spoon. The moss on the big rock. To your right.
Truestrike turned and inhaled sharply. What he had taken for nothing more than moss on a boulder was actually a rattling sniper wrapped in a chameleon cloak. The fabric and paint covering most of his body rendered him nearly invisible, save for the bright flash of his white teeth.
Hey, kid. Glad to see you decided to join us.
Nobby said, gesturing for him to come closer. After receiving a nod from Truestrike, Truestrike carefully approached. The rest of his squad moved in as well, though they kept their spacing and stayed close to cover. They were deep in enemy territory after all, and had no desire to be spotted. "Nice cloak," Truestrike commented as he slid in beside the sniper.
Nice armor.
Nobby replied with a grin.
Pathfinder, eh? Moving up in the world.
Hard to do anything else with my height. Reka answered with a smile of his own. The rattling let out a quiet chuckle.
That be true.
He nodded.
There are more scouts farther back. I'm acting as the forward vanguard.
Good to know. We passed a Tarelian skirmish team not long ago, and we saw at least 2 Krut teams moving through the shield near our position. Truestrike reported.
Aye, plenty of us out here, that's for sure. Scouts, spotters, skirmishers.
Nobby glanced towards the city.
And we're in a deadline. Need to get closer and place the acolytes.
Agreed. My Shasui suggests we use the dried up stream over there. Truestrike said, pointing toward a shallow depression in the terrain. What about you?
Tall grass and brush over there.
Nobby replied, indicating another route.
Covers the ground all the way to those big boulders. Can't say I'm optimistic. Bastards have a lot of heavy guns out there.
Truestrike turned toward the city, and his helmet zoomed in on the defenses. Slick was right. The enemy had not been idle in the days since the ultimatum had been delivered. Trenches, bunkers, and strongpoints covered the approaches in layer after layer of fortification. That's a lot of guns, he noted.
True, but they placed them like shite.
Nobby answered.
Those chucklefucks have no idea what a proper trench line should look like. See, most of their trenches are straight lines.
Truestrike focused more closely and nodded. The defensive trenches really were little more than long, uninterrupted lines carved into the earth. Nobby shook his head in disappointment.
I've seen bloody PDF troops dig better trenches. Sure, they look fancy enough with reinforced walls and all. But what's the point if they're built like this?
He muttered.
One of your lads could jump in there, fire a single rail rifle shot, and probably kill a dozen of those idiots.
Sounds like a plan. Reka half joked. But I'm more worried about those things. He pointed toward one of the towering structures further behind the defensive lines. The reinforced tower was crowned by a massive square turret, fitted with 2 enormous barrels. Each one large enough to make a hammerhead cannon seem modest by comparison.
Aye, turbolasers.
Nobby said with a sniff.
They mount those things at starships. Hopefully someone blows them up before they fire. Or before they decide to target us specifically.
Agreed, Reka said, glancing back at his squad. We will make our approach. You should do the same.
We will. Good luck, kid. Let's make sure we survive this one too, hey?
Slick said with a grin. Let's. Reka answered before moving back. to rejoin his squad. Her forces were in place, every cadre under her command, every element of the Avenger contingent stood ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. Yet she felt impatient, an emotion unfamiliar to her. Her training was rooted in the teachings of a greater good, including the wisdom of stillness and restraint. She had always believed herself capable of patience, but not today.
Your heart rate is elevated, Chassot.
The Savant, her drone companion, observed as it hovered nearby. Koka glanced at the drone and let out a quiet sigh.
I'm impatient.
She admitted.
Truly.
The drone sounded surprised.
Unusual.
I am aware.
Koka replied with a humorless chuckle.
Ever since I was given command of the contingent, I have yearned to lead into battle.
Her voice trailed off as she looked toward the shimmering shield surrounding the city. It was an impressive display of technology native to this galaxy. The shields were powerful and highly efficient, strong enough that even weeks of bombardment would likely achieve little. Thankfully, neither she nor anyone else intended to rely on simple bombardment. They had a far more efficient solution.
It will not be long, Commander.
The drone reassured her.
Not according to my calculations.
Nor mine.
She answered with a faint chuckle before her expression hardened once more.
He is there.
The one known as Ravax?
The Savant asked.
Yes. He and his battle suit. His knight.
She said, almost spitting the word.
And this time, I will not let him escape.
I have full confidence in your abilities, Commander.
The Savant stated, its disc tilting slightly.
Though I would advise haste. Some of our allies may reach him before you do.
Koka did not need clarification, nor did she need to turn around. She had felt the heavy footsteps approaching for some time already. On her display, two massive icons drew steadily closer to her position. They were not part of her contingent, but they would play a vital role in opening a path for it. Her troops moved aside as the pair of storm surges advanced to the crest of a hill where she stood. A small escort force surrounded the towering battlesuits as they finally came to a halt. With a hiss and the grinding sound of stabilizing supports biting into the earth, the massive war machines anchored themselves in place. Their weapons turned toward the city, waiting for a moment to strike, just like everyone else.
I promise to take his head, little helper.
Koka said with cold determination.
And I am a woman of my word.
They are here, Tash Era said quietly. Kira lifted her head from the map she had been studying. The war ghost still unnerved her, even though he had been nothing but respectful since the little incident at the headquarters. And, truth be told, his dry, grim humor had started to grow on her. Especially after she had watched him convincingly play the role of a simple protocol droid while they snuck into the city. His mechanical visor remained fixed on her for a few seconds before he twitched. She frowned. Lancer 1 did not twitch. "Something happened?" she asked. He remained silent for a moment before answering. "My mentor is among the infiltrators." Kira raised an eyebrow. "And?" she prompted. Enduring Spirit stayed quiet for several more seconds before finally speaking. "Whatever you may think of me, however dangerous or monstrous I might seem, I am only a pale imitation of him." She felt the air grow colder at that remark and suppressed a shiver. "Well then," she muttered, "a good thing is on our side." "Yes." The war ghost nodded slowly. "I suppose it is." He stepped a little closer to her. "Try not to twitch." Before she could ask what he meant by that cryptic warning, the air shimmered in front of her and she felt a faint ghost of wind. She blinked as something landed nearby, though she could not actually see it. The air itself seemed distorted, trembling as though under extreme heat. Then a pulse of energy swept across the invisible shape. Transparent hexagons peeled away from the distortion, and a stealth suit revealed itself. Kira resisted the urge to gasp. The battle suit stepped closer, its three-lens faceplate turning to scan both of them before settling on the war ghost. "We are in position, Shas-El," the pilot reported. "Are the Gwevesa rebels prepared to strike?" His attention shifted toward her. Kira grimaced slightly at the dismissive tone. "We are," she said evenly. "My people are only waiting for your signal." "It will come soon," the pilot replied. "Shah himself is handling the main generator." The war ghost stiffened once more, though he gave a small nod. "Understood. When his strike falls, ours will follow." The stealth suit nodded in return before stepping back. Its form flickered, dissolved into shimmering distortion, and vanished once more. Kira's soul swallowed. "Spooky," she whispered. "For those on the receiving end of it." Tash-Era confirmed before turning back toward her. "We will need to move quickly. The path to the fortress is heavily guarded, but we possess enough firepower to break through." Kira's soul nodded and picked up the pulse carbine the Tau had provided for her and her team. It was not a beautiful weapon, but it was undeniably powerful, and she would need every bit of that power to break through the layers of defenses Kong had placed between them. She tightened her grip on the carbine. Soon, she would finally meet the damnable tyrant of Rune. Face to face. Or, more precisely, gun to face. They fell upon the droid formation from behind without warning, power sword and psi whip shattering the rear ranks in an instant. The strange, lanky machines turned the moment they identified the new threat, their barrage against the Thorn and Rose Guard faltering as they shifted targets. And while the droids had proven dangerous in large numbers, they were painfully slow and clumsy compared to the duo. Dane and Lina moved together in perfect synchronization. Dane's power blade carved through the droids with contemptuous ease. The cheap alloys used for the mass-produced soldiers offered no resistance to the weapon designed to pierce Astartes' power armor. Lina's whip, fist and feet proved equally devastating. Her psychic power manifested as controlled arcs of lightning that fried mechanical minds, while her enchanted strength shattered metal shells with brutal efficiency. She found it strangely amusing. All those years of Dane essentially tormenting her through relentless training, and yet, here on the battlefield, she understood exactly how to fight beside him, how to move at his side like a shadow, and he knew how to move with her just as instinctively. The unity with which they fought could only exist because they knew each other so well. And she realized she liked that discovery. It also dawned on her that this battle would have been far more difficult had Dane not been so merciless in his training. Every act of cruelty, or at least most of them, had been meant to prepare her for combat like this. Battles against overwhelming numbers where one had to remain aware of both hostile and friendly fire at all times. More droids turned toward them, blasters rising in unison. A single glance between them was enough. No words were exchanged as they dove in opposite directions and behind cover, crimson blaster bolts tearing through the air after them with murderous intent. But before the barrage could find its mark, streams of crimson laser fire and plasma bolts ripped through the droids instead. The soldiers, who had been pinned down moments earlier, rose to their feet and unleashed disciplined volleys into the machines. The droids fell rapidly, torn apart beneath concentrated fire. Within moments, not a single construct remained standing. At least, not from this group. The battle still raged all around them. In the distance, Lina spotted Magmar leading an assault into one of the buildings several hundred meters away. Fire danced along his twin sabers as he carved through steel and flesh alike, leaving molten metal and burned flesh in his wake. The pyromancer laughed the entire time, the sheer joy of open combat echoing across the battlefield. In the courtyard, she saw Garruk rip the turret off an AAT and use it as a club, his twin chain axes still buried in the ruined hull of a tank. The gigantic beastman, a mirror image of a mythical Minotaurus from Holy Terra, roared as he smashed half a dozen droids apart, sending metal limbs and shattered bodies flying through the air. His tridesmen joined the slaughter with savage enthusiasm, tearing into the defenders' lines without hesitation. Some even trampled over the bodies of their fallen kin in their eagerness to reach the fighting faster. She could also hear, if not see, the synchronized march of Trio's Ktari cohort. The distinct crack of their weapons echoed from the far side of a compound. They were inside the pirate fortress walls now. Soon, they would be inside the fortress itself. Without a conscious thought, Lina lashed out with her whip, sending a bolt of psychic lightning through one of the windows, where she had spotted a pirate carrying some sort of launcher. Whatever ammunition the weapon carried detonated instantly, blasting a jagged hole through the structure. Dane turned toward her with a grin and gave her a nod. No words were needed. Not here, not now. Their actions flowed naturally into one another as they pushed towards the main gate, both determined to be the first through the breach. Resistance was light and disorganized. Whatever forces the enemy could spare had already been destroyed or tied down elsewhere, leaving Lina and Dane with a relatively clear path to their objective. The gate itself was enormous and undoubtedly reinforced, but they carried more than enough explosives to solve that particular problem. Which was why, despite her growing confidence, Lina nearly stumbled when the gates suddenly cracked open on their own. She glanced at Dane, his momentary surprise vanished almost instantly, replaced by a grim concern as they saw what waited beyond. A line of strange, insect-like droids stood in formation, each protected by a spherical energy shield and armed with massive blaster cannons aimed directly at them. Behind them waited another line of tall black droids with tubular heads and heavy weapons clutched in skeletal hands. Their clusters of glowing photoreceptors scanned the battlefield before locking onto the intruders. Bugger. Dane muttered in a dialect she did not recognize before instantly diving back behind cover. Lina followed less than a half a second later. It was a very good thing she did. What erupted from the gate was a torrent of pure death. A dozen Rose Guard and 4 elite Thorn Guard died in the opening salvo. Heavy blaster bolts shattered armor and hurled bodies through the air, flesh and blood vaporizing beneath the sheer heat of the incoming fire. Lina watched Dynasty soldiers torn apart as her own cover began to glow under the relentless barrage pouring from the gate. Dane tried to lean out and return fire, but the incoming storm was too dense for him to accomplish anything. The surviving soldiers pressed themselves flat against the ground or huddled behind whatever cover they could find. Only a few dared return fire, and from what Lina could see, even Helgan shots achieved nothing against the droids' spherical shields. She turned toward Dane, who ground his teeth in frustration. A small, petty part of her found satisfaction in seeing that even someone like Dane could end up trapped in a situation where he was effectively helpless. Unfortunately, a much larger part of her was far more concerned by the fact that she was trapped in that situation with him. Those are some mean-looking walkers, Kuri muttered, lowering his binoculars with a scowl. I think they look a bit silly, Zeno countered. Kuri did not agree. Sure, the 2-legged walkers looked uncanny, their arms replaced by enormous missile pods, but that was precisely the problem. They had enormous missile pods. He had seen recordings of Hailfire droids before, and he would be lying if he claimed they did not terrify him. But these walkers made Hailfires look insignificant. Each pod carried at least twice as many missiles, and that was not even mentioning the absurdly massive cannon mounted above them, large enough to rival, if not surpass, a turbo laser emplacement. One of those monsters would already be terrifying. On the crest of nearby hill, Kuri could see 2 of them. Further away, atop another hill, stood another pair, and if the comm chatter was accurate, nearly a dozen of those storing war machines had been positioned all around the city. Always deployed in pairs, always supported by infantry and armor. You think they will use those big bastards to bombard the city? Zeno asked. Maybe. Kuri replied with a shrug as he studied their defenses. I just have a bad feeling about this. Zeno waved dismissively. That's just stress talking. No, listen to me. Kuri insisted, shaking his head. The Tau have to be planning something. They smashed through the fleet in no time, crashed the bastions outside the shields, and we've already had multiple contacts with enemy scouts and skirmishers slipping through the shield perimeter. Most of which we either killed or drove off. Zeno countered, glancing toward the mortar team behind them. The Tau probably realized they bit off more than they could chew, and are now standing outside the shields with their pants down, trying to figure out what to do next. It can't be that simple, Kuri muttered. Got any alternative explanations for enemy behavior, soldier? Sergeant Olerk asked. The sergeant sounded casual, but Kuri could tell he had been listening the entire time, even while scanning the distant tree line for movement. These guys aren't idiots, Kuri said, his voice tightening slightly. They came prepared. Firepower, manpower, planning, everything. They've been moving exactly on schedule. First the fleet, then the outer strongholds, then the encirclement of a city. He swallowed hard. They weren't stumbling before now, and they sure as hell don't look confused or uncertain. Zeno frowned, looking from Kuri to the distant enemy positions and back again. He still looked unconvinced, but this time he did not dismiss the concern outright. What are you suggesting? Olerk asked, his tone notably more serious. Kuri stared at the distant Tau formations. I think they are waiting. Waiting? Zeno chuckled. Waiting for what? The final syllable never left his throat. A chain of explosions thundered from deep within the city, and the shimmering dome, shielding the capital, flickered violently before collapsing. Kuri felt his blood turn into ice. He grabbed his weapon and flickered off the safety. This! He shouted. They were waiting for this! His terrified cry was drowned out by the roar erupting from the volcano at the heart of the city. Explosives planted by rebels and stealth teams around the geothermal generators had awakened the ancient mountain. Molten fire burst from its crater and surged into the prepared containment channels as emergency systems activated in a desperate attempt to stabilize the eruption. Yet, for all that, this wasn't the checkmate. This was the opening move. The giant walkers opened fire. Their cannons blazed with blinding light, launching spheres of plasma towards the fortress at the center of the city. The blasts slammed into a second shield dome and burst apart in the waves of incandescent energy. The fortress had its own shield generators, and they had activated the moment the city shields failed. But that was not what made Kuri go pale with fear. It was the fire erupting from the giant walkers' missile pods as they launched dozens of missiles at once, straight at the defenders. Take cover! Olerk roared, diving aside. The missiles screamed through the air, singing their song of death before impact, and when they struck, pandemonium followed. Explosions rippled across the city, guided by marker lights and targeting beacons. The missiles found their marks with terrifying precision, annihilating bunkers, strongpoints, and defensive turrets throughout the city, including the one Curie had been manning. The shockwave hurled him sideways. He felt fragments hammer against his helmet and armor, and by some miracle, none of the shrapnel pierced flesh. His ears rang violently as dust and fire swallowed the rooftop around him. Dazed, he pushed himself onto his knees. Zeno was nearby, coughing and struggling to stand. Sergeant Olerk was already back on his feet, shouting orders. "Get up! Get up!" the sergeant yelled, though Curie could barely hear him through the ringing in his ears. "We need to move! Our position is compromised! We need—" Crunch! Between one blink and the next, Olerk ceased to exist as anything recognizable. Curie stared in horror at the spray of blood and pulverized flesh where the sergeant had stood a heartbeat earlier. Something shimmered into view amidst the gore. A pulse of energy rippled outward, revealing a hexagonal distortion pattern as an enormous figure materialized before them. Bulky and dark grey, with glowing crimson lenses fixed upon the defenders, the ghost keel emerged from camouflage like a nightmare given form. The surviving soldiers reacted immediately, opening fire with rifles, while others desperately tried to swing heavy weapons toward the intruder, but the counterattack achieved almost nothing. Blaster bolts either ricocheted harmlessly away or splashed into blackened scorch marks across the battlesuit's thick armor, without causing any meaningful damage. The mechanical Cyclops, still dripping with the remains of their commander, turned toward the heavier weapons just as they prepared to fire. The twin flamers mounted on its shoulders ignited. Streams of fluid flame flooded across the rooftop, engulfing the defenders in liquid fire. Curie grabbed Zeno by the arm and held him upright. "Run!" he screamed, dragging his friend towards the stairwell while ignoring the horrifying shrieks of burning comrades behind them. They crashed through the doorway and stumbled down the staircase. "What in the Sith hell was that?" Zeno shouted, finally finding his voice. "How the hell should I know?" Curie yelled back, terror struggling his own words as he ran. The building trembled violently around them. Above, the screams of dying soldiers mixed with gunfire explosions and thunder of heavy weapons. More than once they nearly lost their footing as shockwaves rattled the structure. At last, they reached the ground floor. Some soldiers were rushing inside, while others fled onto the streets. Officers screamed orders in futile attempt to restore discipline, but discipline no longer existed. There was only chaos. "Hey, what's happening?" one officer shouted. "Soldiers, what happened on the roof?" Curie ignored him completely and bolted into the street. He looked around at a vision of fire, blood, and death. Soldiers and droids ran in every direction with no coordination whatsoever. Some fired wildly at empty streets, while others shot at shimmering shapes, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, unleashing streams of blue energy bolts into the panicked defenders below. And beyond it all, Curie could hear the roar of engines approaching from outside the city. "We need to get deeper into the capital," Curie shouted. "The Tau have launched the full assault." "Bastards!" Zeno yelled, panic twisting his voice.
How did they get inside? How did they blow up the generators? I don't know, and it doesn't matter right now.
Curie snapped as he dragged his friend away from the doomed building toward what he desperately hoped would be safety.
Come on, we need to...
The thunderous roar of engines overhead cut him off. Curie looked up and found himself unable to even curse at what he saw. Dozens of dropships and gunships filled the sky while dark shapes descended from them on plumes of burning exhaust, blotting out the heavens with sheer numbers. Battlesuits. Battlesuits, drones, and buzzing swarms of insects. Deployed in coordinated formations, they descended upon Tauntum City, the 1,000 daggers striking all at once to carve open the city defenses in a relentless, overwhelming assault. Curie watched in mute horror as several Orca gunships unleashed entire drone swarms from their cargo holds. The disc-shaped machines poured into the city like locusts descending upon a field. Worse still, actual insects flew beside them. Their chitinous shells gleamed in the sunlight, while the furious buzzing of their wings filled the air like a roar of some alien plague. The sound of monstrous creatures from another galaxy echoed across the city, and Curie knew with absolute certainty that the noise of those wings would haunt him for the rest of his life. Amid the swarms of drones and clouds of insects flew battlesuits of every shape and size. Some were large, some were enormous. Their engines roared like 1,000 enraged throats announcing the arrival of true warriors. The enemy descended upon the city almost completely unopposed. Most anti-air defenses had already been destroyed by missile barrage, rebel sabotage, or stealth suit strikes. By the time the aerial assault began, only a handful of surviving guns remained to challenge the descending Commonwealth forces, and those that tried were immediately drowned beneath plasma fire and missile strikes. Shit! 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 Curie shouted as the horrible realization set in. Soon, there would be nowhere left to hide. Zeno looked even worse, frozen in terror, barely able to move. But Curie refused to surrender so easily. "Come on, Zeno!" he shouted. "We need to..." The shriek of an incoming missile cut through the chaos. A heartbeat later, the explosion hurled Curie through the air. He slammed into a wall and into darkness. But only briefly. Oblivion did not claim him so easily. Coughing valiantly, Curie shook his head as stars danced across his vision. The visor of his helmet was cracked. His back burned with pain, but he was alive. And he still had his rifle. He looked up just in time to see one of the Tau battlesuits land in the middle of the street. The suit slowly scanned the devastation around it, ear-like sensors twitching as it searched for survivors. Curie pressed himself against cover and held his breath, desperately trying to remain unseen. Then a roar, born from panic and madness, drew his attention. Zeno. His friend charged the battlesuit, screaming like a lunatic. Curie tried to shout for him to get down, to find cover, but the explosion had stolen the air from his lungs, and not a single sound escaped his throat. Zeno opened fire as he ran, his rifle shot splashing harmlessly against the crisis suit's armor. The battlesuit turned toward the human. The militiaman screamed incoherent curses as he began beating the armored giant with his rifle like a club, striking it again and again in a desperate, futile attempt to bring it down. The suit tilted its head slightly, almost as though amused by the sheer tenacity of attack. Then it reached out. One massive hand closed around Xenos' head and lifted him effortlessly off the ground. Xenos screamed as he flayed wildly, swinging the rifle in every direction and missing the battlesuit entirely. Fury, panic, and curses poured from his throat in equal measure. The suit watched the pathetic display of resistance for a few more seconds. Then it squeezed. Curie stared through tear-filled eyes as bone, blood, and fragments of brain matter burst between the battlesuit's fingers, extinguishing his friend's life in an instant. The Tau warrior continued to look at the twitching corpse for a moment before casually tossing it aside with something that could only be described as contempt. It did not even bother to wipe the gore from its hand. Curie gritted his teeth as he crawled deeper into the shattered remains of a nearby home, clutching his rifle tightly. His soul screamed for vengeance, but his body demanded survival. Survival won, especially when the ghost kill landed only a few steps away from the crisis suit. The massive mechanical predator regarded its smaller counterpart silently as it turned toward him. Curie watched, trembling, as the two suits exchanged words he could not understand. They spoke in their native language, and Curie did not even know what it was called. After a brief exchange, the crisis suit nodded and launched back into the sky. The ghost kill watched it depart before remaining motionless amidst the flames and rubble. Curie breathed heavily and slowly began trying to crawl away. Then one of the loose stones beneath him shifted and clattered loudly against the ground. His body froze. The massive suit glanced over its shoulder. Curie pressed himself flat against the broken wall, barely daring to breathe as he prayed the monster had not noticed him. He heard the faint whirl of servos, the sound of a suit's singular crimson optic adjusting. Then it turned away. The ghost kill took several heavy steps before igniting its thrusters and ascending into the air, leaving behind a cloud of dust and ash. Curie finally inhaled, only to break into violent coughing as smoke and dust filled his lungs. Slowly, shakily, he rose to his feet, alive. Alone. The battle still raged across the city. Gunfire and desperate resistance echoed from deeper within the capital, while the skies roared with jet engines and the endless buzzing of alien wings. Swallowing hard, Curie took a trembling step toward the city center, toward the roaring volcano and the shimmering shield protecting the fortress, as another storm surge salvo slammed into it. Town Tomb City was burning, and beneath the thunder of explosions and gunfire, Curie was certain he could hear the screams of terrified civilians. Part of him considered throwing away his weapon and surrendering to the Tau. Another part wanted to crawl into the corner of some ruined building and quietly cry until the nightmare ended. He even thought about retrieving Zeno's body, burying him, giving his friend at least a shred of dignity. But no, something ancient and stubborn, buried deep within his DNA, demanded that he keep moving. So he did. Rifle shaking in his hands, Kuri pushed deeper into the city in search of other defenders, if any still remained alive. 8 minutes after he left, a crude hunting pack stalked through the abandoned street. They found Zeno's corpse among the rubble, and, honoring him in their own twisted way, they feasted upon his flesh before moving deeper into the burning city, their beaks stained crimson with blood. It was not their first meal that day, and it would not be their last. Ravax grinned viciously as the shield protecting the city flickered out of existence. Finally, he growled. From the very moment he had entered his beloved war machine, he had been waiting for the Tau to reveal their hand and launch their attack. He had considered several possibilities, different ways the enemy might begin their assault. The destruction of the geothermal generators had not ranked highly among them. Those facilities were supposed to be heavily protected. But clearly, Kong, once more, and more likely for the last time, underestimated Kira's soul. Ravax had warned him repeatedly. The woman should have been hunted down and eliminated years ago, but the governor had refused. According to Kong, a public enemy was useful. Rebel attacks justified his tightening grip on power year after year, allowing him to consolidate authority under the guise of security. Perhaps it was hypocritical for Ravax to mock Kong's greed and ambition when he himself shared those same traits. But, unlike the governor, Ravax was no fool. He did not leave rivals and saboteurs alive. He made examples of them, and of every fool who dared challenge him afterward. More importantly, he learned. He would never claim he had never repeated a mistake, but he came close. Which was why he had been ready when the Tau struck. His shields held, his sensors remained operational, and when they detected the faint shimmer of something materializing behind him, he reacted instantly. One of the Rancor's rear turrets opened fire, and Ravax laughed as the previously invisible mechanical Cyclops was stripped of its camouflage.
You think you can sneak up on me, on a hunter?
He roared as he turned Rancor toward the new threat.
I am the predator here. You are nothing but prey.
The battlesuit tried to evade him, tried to escape his wrath. It was futile. 2 missiles launched from the Rancor's rack and slammed directly into the machine, blowing it apart in a storm of fire and debris. A bloodthirsty grin spread across Ravax's face as the assassin sent to kill him was obliterated before his eyes. A shame, really. The death was too quick for his taste. He would prefer to make them all suffer. though he knew that the dream was impossible now. This battle was already lost. Kong and his pathetic little empire were doomed to collapse. But Ravax did not care. He had prepared an exit plan long ago. A specially modified shuttle waited for him, advanced enough to slip past the Tau blockade undetected. It would be a shame to abandon Rancor after all the years the war machine had served him faithfully, but another Rancor could always be built. The goddess knew he possessed more than enough hidden wealth and resources stored safely at his base on Scarif. There he would hide, rebuild his strength, and eventually sell his services to the Tau's enemies, his knowledge, his experience. Soon enough, he would become the most powerful warlord in the Outer Rim, the scourge of the Tau. But before any of that, he would find and kill Truestrike. That pathetic insect had taken his arm, had spat upon his legend. She would pay. She would die. Her skull would adorn the throne of his new empire. An alarm shattered his fantasies. Ravax looked upward and grimaced. The sky swarmed with Tau gunships, deploying troops by the hundreds. Truthfully, he was impressed. A perfectly coordinated strike from within the city, around it, and now above it as well. That leader of theirs, Truestrike, had to be good. Ravax raised his cannons toward the sky, a monstrous grin spreading across his face. A shame he will have to wait his turn, unlike you. He pulled the trigger. Rancor's weapons erupted to life, joined instantly by the guns and vehicles of his reavers. Streams of crimson plasma and volleys of missiles screamed into the sky, hunting for targets. Some of the enemy pilots managed to evade the barrage. Many did not. Battlesuits and drones exploded in mid-air beneath the unexpected intensity of anti-air fire. They clearly had not expected serious resistance. Fools! They had underestimated him and his reavers. As the scorekeeper is my witness! Ravax roared, the speakers of his war machines carrying his voice across the battlefield. You shall pay for your arrogance and blood! And pay they did. Thanks to extensive upgrades to both hardware and targeting systems, Ravax no longer struggled nearly as much with tracking airborne targets. Within moments, several battlesuits spiraled from the sky, trailing smoke and flame. Ravax laughed, roared, exulted in the destruction of his enemies. This was war. The kind of war he had spent his entire life searching for and never truly found. A creature like him had been born into a galaxy that had forgotten real conflict for 1,000 years. But now warriors from a galaxy where there was only war had come to his stars, and for the first time, Ravax felt something close to hope. Purpose, direction, A path painted in blood and gore, blessed by the scorekeeper herself. Follow me, he bellowed as Rancor surged forward. Follow me and kill everything that stands in your path. His followers answered with savage cheers. The Reavers roared their approval, both inspired and terrified by their Warlord. Combined volleys of their vehicles and heavy weapons forced Commonwealth troops to keep their distance, focusing instead of softer targets elsewhere in the city. Still, reports of the enemy force spread rapidly through the Commonwealth command channels, and one commander answered first. Commander Truestrike. The moment she received confirmation of Ravak's presence, she redirected the core of her contingent toward his position with a single objective in mind: intercept him, and finally, finish him off. And that was part 1 of episode 19, everyone. I know that my work slowed down, but as I mentioned before, I have a lot of IRL stuff to take care of, so my productivity has dropped. Still, we are very close to the season finale. 2, maybe 3 more episodes, and season 1 will be officially over. After that happens, I will make a little pause with Star Wars X Warhammer 40k narration, make other the videos, do some requests, something for the change of pace. Not to mention I'm planning something with Killer Studio, so wait for that as well. This series is quite the adventure, wouldn't you agree? But I am damn proud of it, and I hope you enjoy it. I put some energy and spirit into this episode, tried my best to convey the intensity of this terrible battle. Do tell me what you think in the comments. You can also, as usual, place your Q&As in the comments below. 1 question per person. Remember to put Q&A on top of a comment. Standard rules. You had a lot of really damn fun questions last episode, so I have high hopes for this one. Now, if you would like to support me directly, go to the Patreon, where you can get early access to the videos, scripts and other fun elements. You can also visit the merch store, there are some goodies there. Lastly, I'm still gathering funds on Ko-fi for our pieces dedicated to Season 2. Remember that it's thanks to your donations this series has its own art gallery, free of AI slop. And you don't need to donate a lot. Every dollar counts. The more money is in the budget, the more art I can commission to make this series better. And on this note, I need to extend my thanks to magnificent artists who created art for this episode: Hayden Lumpkin, Weasel Elk, Cubic Curator, Blue Banderhate, Makawi, and 3D Vincents. I also extend my gratitude to the voice actors: Luffy, also known as Tia Boba, who voiced Commander Truestrike, and member of our Discord, Wack, who voiced Nobby, the Rattling Sniper. Thank you all. I couldn't make this series without your hard work. I also extend my thanks to the highest tier supporters on Patreon, who ensure that I'm getting a little bit more than minimal wage. Michael Pelson, Josh Travis, Cell, Sab, Rizda9, Saragusta, Boromir117, and Heimko. I tip my hat to all of you. Expect the final episode of Your Homebrews Season 3 to come soon, and the same goes for the Q&A. But I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Now, my dear viewers and listeners, remember, wherever you are, whatever you do, try to enjoy yourself while you can. I wish you most heretical day. Ta-ta!